there's two excuses that people use not to get somewhere, not to achieve a goal, not to work on a dream, not to strive for something. And the first of those, I would say, is failure. They're afraid. The second thing, talent. Now, how does talent hold you back?
How does talent hold you back?
Now, I'm not saying that you having talent is going to hold you back, though we'll dive into that in a second. But the perception of talent is what holds other people back.
And we're back.
And we're back.
And we're back.
And we're back. You can hear the individual hairs.
Yes, we haven't shaved. Even though November's tomorrow. No shave November's actually
I'm getting
tomorrow.
a head start.
Oh, yeah. See, we don't really grow full beards.
I don't grow facial hair.
So we have to do like a week in advance for No Shave November. So by the time November comes around, people are like, wow, you can really grow a nice beard.
That's nice. How
No.
long you been growing that? 3 months, man.
It's been at least 2 days. But yes, we're back. We're back.
And we're better than ever.
We're better than ever.
Improving every single time.
Yeah. Glad you guys can join us. I'm your host, Mark Schlahowski.
Dang, that's what we forgot, huh?
What?
Welcome to the Avink and Leather podcast.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of waiting for.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm like, what is it? What is it? What are we missing?
What's the name of our podcast?
Who are you?
Who am I?
Welcome to the Avink and Leather podcast. I'm your host, Vily Klesnichenko.
And I'm your host, Mark Schlahowski.
And we're happy to have you.
Anyways, Vilimir, what did you bring to the table today?
Good question.
I don't see anything. What
Are you blind? New glasses.
Ew.
I brought
A book.
a book.
It's not a recipe book.
It's not a recipe book.
It's not a journal.
It is a book named Outliers, or called Outliers, The Story of Success by Malcolm Gladwell. And it says it's a #1 national bestseller.
I see you have some like coffee stain on it right there. Yeah, I would.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Mark, what'd you bring to the table today?
What did I bring to the table? Well,
Yeah.
don't look very far. Because I brought... Oh! I brought my microphone to the table today.
That's it?
That's it.
We haven't seen this puppy in a long time, have we?
No. I sent this guy in for repairs. I sent this guy in for repairs because it was broken. But now it's back, and it's better than ever alongside with us. But I remember whenever I first got this microphone. It was like 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was really into music production. And so I decided to go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff. I bought a keyboard. I bought, the Bluebird. And I also bought this Aston Spirit. But I remember buying all this stuff. And the first day that I tried to record something, I bought like a decent DAW. That's what it's called. That's where you record all your music on. So I bought like a decent DAW. And I tried recording music for the first time. And it was garbage. It was so bad.
Was it because you didn't know how to use the stuff, or?
It was a bit of everything. Yeah, it was because I didn't know how to use the stuff. And, I had a great deal of passion behind it. But
it was basically polishing a turd?
It was basically polishing a turd. It was so bad. And I remember showing it to people, and people were like, wow. Very good. And I'm like, don't worry, this is not a full thing. I'd be like, this is just a rough draft, even though I spent like a good bit of time just trying to
your
polish
final
it up.
draft, like the third final draft.
Yeah. No, but it started out, where I wasn't that great at it because, I didn't know how to use the technology. I didn't know how to put all the pieces together. But 3 years later, like now, I have a much better understanding of how to record a song. Definitely not as scared or frightened as I used to be, like whenever I was
Would you say that you're a better singer now?
I would say I'm
versus 3 years ago?
Yeah, of course.
Better musician?
It's one thing to sing in the shower, but it's completely different whenever you try to record yourself on a decent microphone. So you could really hear all the flaws every time I try to sing. But yeah, I started out just some ordinary dude just trying to record some songs, and 3 years later I could say that like I'm much better at like music production and all that stuff. And I'm sure you could say the same obviously with Vilimir Visuals. Obviously, with videography, I'm sure that you could say the same thing about videography. I'm sure your first clippings weren't that fantastic either.
They're still not.
They're still not. We're still learning.
No, we're still learning. That's kind of what we're diving straight into today, the topic of consistency. And this microphone here is symbolic. It's symbolic of this topic. Mark obviously started off at one level, and through time he reached another level with his music production. For myself, I'm diving into videography nowadays. I have good gear or decent gear or whatever.
Gear.
Yeah, it's a bit outdated now, but diving in, like you're starting to upgrade. You're starting to dig through YouTube and watch the tutorials how to
crash a drone. Sorry. Too early.
Last week I brought in a new drone.
He was so excited about it.
Funny thing about consistency, hey? Last week, this is the second time we're recording this episode, but last week for my visual, I brought in a drone, a brand spanking new drone. Like, yeah, I'm so excited to fly this thing. We're going to get some great shots. I'm going to up my videography game. And I flew it up into the air and I crashed it right back down.
I remember he was so excited about it. His eyes lit up every time he talked about his drone. But then I remember I was standing right underneath where it happened, where his drone zapped right into a power line. And I'll hear the drone just above us, and just smacks on the ground. I look at Vily, I'm like, oh no. And Vily takes forever to walk on over. But yeah,
what's done is done.
What's done is done.
We're talking about consistency and goals. You with music, myself with visual production, our combined goal of doing something with the podcast, obviously. There's one way to get better. Whatever your goal is going to be, you have to have consistency.
Consistency. 100%.
Consistency.
It takes consistent work to produce high quality content. Very often we try to just jump straight in and expect high quality content, but obviously, I experienced it with music production, you experienced it with videography. It's not going to be just like that. It takes a great deal of effort. And once again, we wouldn't consider ourselves top-notch podcasters in and of itself.
We're not that good.
We're not that good. And even in our flaws, we ourselves had a lot of mess ups within the podcast,
So it's funny that we're talking about the topic of consistency, and it's ironic, we're talking about the drone crash all within 1 week, the span of 2 days. We get together, I bring the drone to show, the next day I crash the sucker. The same day where we recorded the topic of consistency, I'm transferring files and everything, trying to put a promotional video together, and I realize this audio, my voice, we didn't shoot through the microphones actually. It was all through the laptop, and I was like, we're gonna have to scrap this and we're gonna have to do it again. Ironic, right?
It is pretty ironic.
But that's kind of the story of the journey of the podcast actually, because this isn't the first time we screwed something up. We've had how many different mess ups. Let's go back to the very first episode, which we don't really talk about.
We will not speak of.
We will
but
speak of.
Maybe this once.
The first episode, we get together, we jerry rig everything. We start recording. We get through a full hour of recording, and then suddenly we transfer everything onto the laptop, only to realize somehow it disappears. It's gone into the abyss.
Orphan files.
Or
something like that.
Or another. Yeah, you move a folder around and suddenly it's not in the place where the program expects it to be, and you're sitting there for 2 hours trying to figure out where do I get the sound? Where is the sound? I see that there's something here, there's megabytes of data in this file, but it's saying this WAV file is has no audio. You're playing back zero, nothing. My favorite, we recorded one time in slow motion.
Okay. Let's just backtrack. We recorded an hour-long discussion in slow motion on my iPhone.
So, going back to how we were fixing things up like on the fly type of deal, still getting production quality up. And
Yes.
we had to rely on iPhone
Mm-hmm.
a good bit. And slowly we transitioned. Obviously, like this episode, we have 2 different cameras. We have a different workflow that we're using, so we don't have to use iPhone. But we had that backup at that point in time. So like we'd have the main camera, and then we'd have the iPhone. And what happened was we started recording, and it recorded the full discussion, an hour-long discussion, in 240 frames per second.
It ended up being
footage.
It ended up being what, like 30 gigabytes?
Ended up being like 26 gigabytes.
Took up
actually.
it's 60 gigabytes. Took up my entire storage on my
26.
phone. What was it? 26?
26.
Took up the entire storage on my phone just by taking one video.
And so the problem, like afterwards, you think of, okay, well, why is that so bad? You get to trying to transfer it somewhere. First off, like, how do you transfer it to another iPhone is one thing. Like, you could try to airdrop it, but you're not going to airdrop something that's that large.
Yeah.
And like, the second thing, how do I get it to the computer? You're trying to do it through iCloud, but it's too large to do through iCloud. You're trying to like put it into Dropbox or like Google Drive or something else. It's way too big for that sort of stuff. And we get to the point I have to like put it into iMovie. I have to chop it into 3 different parts. After I chop it into 3 different parts, I had to put my phone on a charger and have Dropbox open and have like those 3 separate parts uploading for a full day, so I could then open it on my computer through Dropbox, download it.
That was a whole process. I think we spent a solid like
week.
A couple evenings just trying to like figure out how we can do this, like downloading different software. It was a lot. And once again, ironically, on our consistent episode, this is already the second time that we're doing it.
This is episode 2.
Episode.
Technically, this is episode
6. Yeah, 6. Wow.
This is episode 6. Yeah, we're getting there. We're gonna be in double digits soon. Blah. We're gonna be in double digits. Double bloopers.
No, but regardless, we had a lot of failures within, even trying to start up a podcast, but we learned from the failures. And next time we're going to learn to take it easy, like trying to put the files in a nice folder, making sure we're not recording things on slow motion, making sure that our cameras are fully set. Even if we had failures, we never gave up. And how easy it is to give up after you failed, And especially...
What's the quote that you wanted to bring up?
Yes.
Thomas Peterson.
Thomas Peterson, yes. No, Thomas Edison, his quote was, and we know Thomas Edison to be, the famous inventor of the light bulb in 1879, where he effectively made light bulbs practical for everybody, And his quote was, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." So, like, in his process of inventing the light bulb, he had a lot of failures in the process, and yet he still says, "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that don't work." And it's crazy to think that like somebody that invented such a thing that we see all around us,
How many light bulbs we got?
How many
in here?
light
Like
bulbs?
6.
Hey,
7, 8,
50 cent light bulbs from IKEA.
Oh.
Can't beat that. But regardless, he had a lot of different failures. He says, "I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." If only we can have such a mindset.
Failure, you shouldn't look at it as failure. You look at it as data. Data scientists are going to tell you, there's not really such a thing as failure. You're going to see that something proves something or something disproves something. You see one way to do it, you see another way not to do it. All of this tinkering, it teaches you something. But it's interesting we bring up the topic of failure. There's 2 excuses that people use not to get somewhere, not to achieve a goal, not to work on a dream, not to strive for something. And the first of those, I would say, is failure. They're afraid. Like, why? From early on, from childhood, right? if you don't know the answer, or like you're only like half confident in the answer when the teacher is asking a question, you kind of like, you don't want to raise your hand. The teacher says, any questions? Nobody's asking anything because you don't want to look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Or like you shout something wrong and you're thinking to yourself, oh man,
That's so dumb.
Everybody's going to look at me like I'm stupid.
Yeah.
And this kind of mindset continues on for some people. Some people grow out of it, but others are stuck in that, thinking,
Stuck in a
I don't want to
self-perception.
fail.
Yeah.
I don't want others to look at me and say, you're a failure.
Yeah.
And
It's
they
like
don't
this,
get anywhere.
It's like this inward look, you know. Even though you have the right answer, we're scared of failure.
But like, what's the worst that can happen? You learn that you're wrong, and then you're going to find the right answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst that's going to happen if you try something? I mean, you could go bankrupt.
People are gonna laugh at you, and they're gonna talk about you the rest of the year.
You're going to go bankrupt. Your business is going to fail. You may lose your job, your family. So
There are certain levels. There's certain levels of risk.
we get it.
There's certain levels of risk where obviously, you know, double thinking does work.
But in the small minutia of day to day, you know, if you don't take those risks that are moderate, if you're not going to be taking, you know, a chance in some places in your life, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the one thing that holds people back. Failure. The second thing, talent. Now, how does talent hold you back?
How does talent hold
Now,
you back?
I'm not saying that you having talent is going to hold you back, though we'll dive into that in a second. But the perception of talent is what holds other people back, right? They use it as one of their excuses. They'll see somebody who's like an all-star musician, all-star basketball player, whatever, and they're going to say, he's so talented. I could never do that. She's so talented. She's so smart. They write you off as talented, and they may never see the work that you may have had to put in to that podcast, or you're a prodigy at music, you know, like you're making YouTube videos of you playing piano, whatever else.
It's a shame to justify inconsistency with something like talent, you know. Even for myself, whenever I first started out singing, you know, it wasn't that great. It wasn't that hot.
No?
No, but like a lot of times people, even in the realm, like, I guess, of music, people are like, I'm not a good singer. I don't have a good voice. But a lot of times it's not just about you having a good voice or somebody being naturally talented. But a lot of it is just training your vocal cords, just getting that down, getting a good pitch.
Learning to have good rhythm, learning to have that good hearing.
Some people that, you know, naturally don't have a good voice end up actually becoming really good artists and really good singers just because they're able to get the technicality down and actually surpass those who have better voices. But even in that, it would be a shame for somebody to just write off singing and, you know, obviously justifying inconsistency with talent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now that we've talked about, it's interesting that we're talking about talent as an excuse. And with that, I'd like to transition into what I brought to the table.
Is that
Outliers.
a drone? Oh, that's not a drone.
It's not a drone. That
That
was
is-
last episode.
Oh.
Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. So this guy is known as one of the people who popularized the idea that you have to have 10,000 hours into a skill or 10,000 hours into a job or whatever it is that you're doing to be called a master. And here he brings up a bunch of different examples in this book. He brings up basketball players. He brings up like some tech giants like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. He brings up composers, right? When he looks into their past and he looks at the history, their greatest works were written about 10 years into composing music. 10 years of playing and constantly composing music.
Not a year.
Not a
10
year.
years.
There were a couple of exceptions there, like a couple who did it in 9 and like one person who did it in 8 that he references there. But like he talks about Beethoven and Mozart and all these other guys, and he quantifies, like he puts a quantity to it and says it's about this 10,000 hour mark where you start to hit that flow, where you start to hit that point where you can really make an impact, whether it's in composition, whether it's in coding. You know, you like the world around us, we rely so much on the internet, and who is responsible for that? Some guy in here. Some guy in here. It would be great if I knew his name, huh? Bill Joy. Okay. So talking about Bill Joy here, so much of the stuff that like we see around us was because of this guy, Bill Joy. He had the opportunity. A lot of these guys had the opportunity, and that's where we can't write off talent and opportunity, obviously. Being in the right place at the right time has an effect. Being born into a certain year may have an effect where you're a prime candidate to have the opportunity to put in those hours, right? But these people that he brings up as an example, they all put in 10,000 hours plus, and that's when they start really making an impact. That's when they start off their businesses that take off like a rocket ship, right?
So we see it's not even so much of the talent per se, but how much work you're putting into it. 10,000 hours? That's a lot of hours.
10,000 hours, yeah.
Did you put 10,000 hours into anything? Anything at all?
I put 10,000 hours into many things.
Oh.
Jack of all trades, master of
none is sometimes better than master of one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is oftentimes better than master of one. By the time I'm 60 years old, I will have mastered 5 different things, okay?
Whoa.
Now, 10,000 hours, let's divide that by, 52? Or how many? 24 hours in a day,
24
right?
hours in a day, yeah.
10,000 hours.
52.
How many hours are in a day?
52 weeks in an hour.
52 weeks in an hour. We're going to divide 10,000 hours by 24, right? 416 hours.
416 days. 416 days.
Dang it.
Yeah.
416 days. So if you did something nonstop, you did not sleep. As you can tell, math is not my strong suit. Yeah.
Sorry.
416 hours.
You're so confident about your answer.
You divide 10,000 hours by 24 and you will get 416 hours.
You're so confident about your answer.
Oh, jeez. So 416 days, roughly, that it divides into. 417, you could say. Now, so you could say, well, that's just a little over a year. But what about sleep? What about eating? What about all these other tasks that you have to go about your day and do? The mundane things of life, you know?
Yeah, 416 days, that's a solid, increment above a whole year. That's crazy.
Yeah.
A whole year of your life focused on one task.
A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Basically.
Out of the many years that we live here on this earth.
Yeah, but that's what it takes to become a master of something. So we talked about how talent is not necessarily what's going to get you to that place where you want to be. You can set a goal in front of yourself, right? I'm going to reach this goal right here. What's going to get you there? It's not going to be your innate ability or your talent. It's not going to be motivation. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and it goes. You wake up one morning and you're like, I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
I could snooze and sleep for a couple more hours instead of getting up and doing what I want to do. You have to have that discipline, that consistency. Consistency. And that's what's going to get you there.
Yeah. And obviously it kind of goes back into setting goals and all that stuff. But regardless, we expect a certain level of greatness and success after a short period of time. But we can see that consistency is the most consistent thing towards success. We talked about innate ability. We talked about failure, adding on to it as well.
The data that you get from your failures.
Yeah, but we know Dwayne Johnson to be this big guy, and but he's also a very motivational figure. And he says success isn't always about greatness. Success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success, and then greatness will come. We perceive that we're going to achieve a certain level of greatness within a short period of time, but very often if we want to achieve top level of greatness, it's going to require consistency.
that brings up a great parable. Actually, I want to bring up that ties into this. An example of a pottery instructor, actually. So there is a pottery instructor at some point in time who has a class, and he divides them in half. All right. He splits his class into two groups. Group A has to make pottery every single day for 30 days. So 30 pots in total that they have to do, right? Group B, they have to work on a single pot for 30 days. And he's going to grade them on, that quality, the quality of their pot, obviously. At the end of the month, we see that the teacher grades the quality of the pots, and without exception, every single one of those pots that were considered great comes from Group A. Not the Group B. Group B kept on focusing on perfecting the pot
to achieve top level
something. You're like,
top level of quality.
Okay, this one time that I gotta do it, I gotta make sure that this one shot is right. Versus Group A, who was allowed to make mistakes, who was allowed to...
And they just kept going at it.
You just keep going at it. You see that something fails, something doesn't work or whatever. You're like, oh, okay, well, that technique didn't work. This technique didn't work. It crumbled. It was too dry, too wet, whatever. You keep on going. You keep on going. And through time, you're developing those talents that allow you to make the quality pot. Now, the same thing applies into every aspect of our life. And the question comes up that many people may ask, what's better, quantity or quality?
Definitely, I would say moderation.
Moderation in all things, right?
Moderation in all things.
But it's great
Well,
to
it's firstly, it's obviously, like we already talked about, excellence in and of itself. We need to be striving for excellence. But there's a certain level, cutoff point where it's like if you're focusing and fixating so much on quality, you're going to spend your entire day on it, and it's not efficient. It's not an efficient use of your time. Say you're studying for a test and you decide to just study really hard for one particular section. You got it down to a science, that whole section, but you're kind of completely forgetting about this whole other thing. All these other chapters of the test that you could have been studying for as well. You're spending so much use of your time into one particular thing that you completely, it's almost like a waste of time,
I would say a great example here would be of you set in your mind the goal of planting a garden.
Yeah.
You want to plant a garden and you're like, okay, now what do I do? Well, I got to think about, am I going to plant a vegetable garden? Is it going to be a flower garden? Well, do I need to build a fence? What kind of fence do I build? Chain link or a wooden fence? Do I have trees in the backyard that I need to cut down so they get enough sunlight? Is it going to be too much sunlight? How often do I have to water them? Is the ground fertile enough or not? And you get stuck on that. If you're thinking too much about it, you can get stuck. Meanwhile, Jeff, your neighbor, whose grass is always greener, is already planting a garden. He decided, I'm going to plant a garden. Went to Home Depot. He bought some seeds. Went, tilled the ground, planted them. That's it. He sees that there's weeds growing up. He starts to pull them out. He sees that rabbits are nibbling at his plants and at his vegetables. And he decides, oh, okay, well, I need to get something that's going to keep the rabbits away, whether it's a special chemical, whether you're going to have to build a fence. He'll do some research then. And he does all of these things in the process where you are stuck at the beginning and you're not getting into it yet. A lot of your wisdom, a lot of your growth, a lot of that knowledge is going to come through the journey. It's not going to be coming with the beginning, with the research and everything.
100%.
It starts there. You can start there. It's great. But if you, say you want to get to point B from point A, you have to start making steps.
Yeah.
Even
if it's a whole bunch of minuscule steps along the way, but as long as you're taking that step forward and you're actually using your time to the best that you can, I feel like that's the way to go. Making sure that you're using the amount of time that you're given effectively and actually putting it to something,
Take a look at our this podcast, for example, right? Episode 6 now. It's great. And we've been filming for a couple of months now, but every episode, we're by no means geniuses. We're by no means the best podcasters out there. But with every episode, you can see that there's a little bit of growth happening, whether in the visual aspect, whether in the audio aspect, whether in the editing or whatever else, whether the content that we're producing. All of these things, we get feedback from ourselves and from others, and we know where to make the adjustments. And like looking back, I could say I'm proud of the growth that we have had.
100%.
Handful, but there's growth.
Exactly.
In the visual page, like with the videography stuff, I'm growing from like point A, where it was kind of like shaky, shaky footage, bad color grading, maybe like not good audio, whatever else, to, better quality stuff. It comes with time. It comes with consistency. If you stick at it, if you keep on putting in those hours, you're going to get somewhere.
Exactly. We can't just have this justification through failure or through, the perception of other people. We see that,
Talent.
they have innate talent.
I have a great example about talent.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Like
Personal.
what, Vily Mayer?
Well, when I was a small wee boy, a wee lad,
You speak.
when I was a small boy in elementary school, where you build the foundation, where you build the fundamentals of your education, right? They tested me and decided that I was a smart boy. So they put me in the
You're a
smart
smart
group.
boy,
They're
Vily.
like, you go in the smart group and you get to do these smart things. And it's like, oh, cool, I'm smart. Because they see that you catch on the fundamental stuff very easily. You don't have to try very hard, right? It just comes naturally to you. And so I'm put in like this group, put in these special classes, you could say, gifted program, right? And over time, it comes back to bite me in the butt. As you could probably attest yourself if you were finding yourself in these shoes. Because early on, since everything comes so easy to you, you don't have to study. You don't have to like put in the work that everybody else has to do, because you can just cruise and you're going to get the A. And that's what I did. I got straight A's all up until like middle school, and then slowly started declining there.
Oh.
You never build the study habits because it comes easy, right?
Yeah.
And when the content starts to actually catch up and get more complex and harder, the foundational, study habits that you could have built up early on aren't there to support you. And that's where it comes back to bite you in the butt. Being a procrastinator my whole life,
No bueno.
no bueno.
No bueno.
I get to college, right? And that's where I know that I have to start seriously improving. And like, it was a tough journey going with lots of ups and downs. But like, had I built those study habits from the very get-go,
You would have been a beast.
I would have been a beast.
Would have been a beast. But now you're just sitting here.
Now
in
I'm
a
just
studio.
sitting here in a basement.
Sitting here in a basement.
I'm sitting here in a
Look
basement.
at you now, Vily.
But the people
Yeah.
that built the study habits, they caught up. They catch up. Since you have this talent, you can just rely on just that. The other people that don't necessarily have the talent, they're going to learn those good study habits. They're going to have to work harder, right? But they build that foundation, which leads them to a certain point in time to overtake you, whether it's in music, whether it's going to be in art, whether it's going to be in their studies.
Yeah.
They overtake you. And that's why you can't rely on talent. Talent alone is not going to get you somewhere.
Perfect example. Perfect example of how relying too much on talent can sometimes get you nowhere. Because even if you have all this talent, you're not putting it to an effective use, and completely falls to the wayside. But it's also like, even in the midst, you weren't able to learn all these healthy life habits that some people that didn't have the talents that you did had, because they lacked the talent. They had to study more. And it's even in that process, and that consistent process of learning all these different things, how that can generate new habits in the process in of itself. They're able to be a hard worker. They're able to learn resilience, and having resilience and failure in and of itself. And sometimes even lacking the talent can be made up for through these other life habits that you form along the way.
Yeah.
don't rely too much on your talents, Vily. But hey, how much more of an effective person you can be if you had these talents and actually putting it to an effective use.
That's why we cannot write off talent completely, right? That's why we cannot write off opportunity and luck. As we know, there's so many factors to life that make life so complicated and interesting.
And exciting, yeah.
Like from the last episode, we were talking about, Ecclesiastes, where we're talking that it's not always the wise people, it's not always the good people that have good things happen to them. The bad people, it rains on the good and the bad. It's sunny for the good people and the bad.
Yeah.
And like there's all these different variables that come in each of our lives, and we can't just have a simple or a simplified outlook on our life and say that A plus B is going to equal C. But consistency, I would say, is the biggest factor there. Having that consistency, whether you do or do not have the opportunity, whether you do or do not have the talent, that's going to be the factor that will determine whether you succeed or fail.
Exactly. And that's with everything. That's with absolutely everything. If you're going to be hitting the gym and you're going to be working hard to like gain like these big muscles and whatnot. Oh, yeah. No, but if there's like a point in time where you quit or you just stop working out for like a short period of time, you're going to see tremendous result in a negative sense. You're going to start seeing body weight gain and muscle decrease. And
deterioration.
Yeah, deterioration. And it's like even like doing something like going to the gym every single day and having that consistency, how that can increase, muscle growth and everything. Even on the days that you don't feel like it. Another thing that we can justify inconsistency is basing it off of emotion. Some days we just don't feel like doing a certain thing. Sometimes we just don't feel like, and I believe we talked about this before, we just don't feel like doing something that we're passionate about. And everything just falls to the wayside because, we become inconsistent because of our emotions. Yeah. What did that tie really well into? It was discipline, I believe.
Yeah, discipline.
And how like discipline and consistency go hand in hand.
Discipline and consistency are going to take you far. We're talking about having that motivation. Motivation's not going to wake you up in the morning. Motivation comes and it goes. You see somebody on Instagram, which is all highlight reels, obviously.
Highlight
reels. Like you see everybody's highlights of their life.
Yeah.
You don't see the hard work that they're going to put in. But let's say you do see something and you're like, I'm going to get that big. I'm going to be that muscular, or I'm going to get that talented at piano. Like it lights a fire in you, but that fire doesn't last.
It's not going to last forever.
That discipline, building that discipline, like the people with the good study habits, what was there? The discipline that helped them to be consistent. What was there for the people that are bodybuilding, waking up every single morning and hitting the gym, or abstaining from certain foods, whatever lifestyle, whatever.
Straight discipline. And how that ties perfectly into consistency.
So, remain disciplined. Remain consistent. And you will go far.
You will go very far. Do not rely or do not have a perception of others, or just don't see just their innate ability in a certain category, and having that, start to justify you not being able to do something. You can do it. You just gotta just put one step in front of the other and actually go for it. And obviously failure as well. We like to justify our inconsistency with failure and how that can cause a roadblock in our life. But pushing through, developing a certain level of resilience, that will make you into an entirely different beast. Yeah.
So that's our message for you today.
That's our message.
Be a beast.
Be a beast.
I'm your host, Vily Klosnichenko.
And I'm your host, Mark Schlahowski.
Signing off. Be a beast.
Be a beast.